What if everything about you, your destiny, your health, even your mind, was decided long before you were born? All because your ancestors couldn't resist one dangerous obsession: keeping their bloodline pure. For centuries, royal families around the world made a chilling bargain, trading genetic risk for power and prestige. The price? Broken bodies, fractured minds, and family trees so tangled they barely made sense anymore. Today we're diving into the tragic, haunting, and sometimes downright disturbing stories of history's most inbred women. And trust me, by the time we reach number 1, you'll be speechless. At number 10 is Isabella II of Spain. She ruled from 1833 to 1868, but her story isn't one of royal splendor. It's one of the devastating cost of centuries of intermarriage. Born in 1830, Isabella was welcomed as her father's long-awaited child, though he had desperately hoped for a son. But the joy faded quickly. From the very start, Isabella and her sister's fragile health raised quiet whispers at court, and it's no mystery why. Isabella was the product of an uncle-niece marriage, and her family tree, a genetic maze. Her grandparents on one side were also her great-grandparents on the other. At just 16, she was married off to her double-second cousin. She bore 11 children, yet only 5 survived. Even more shocking, historians believe her husband fathered none of them. Their marriage, strained and secretive, reflected the dark realities of royal life. In the end, Isabella lost her throne, but her legacy endures, a portrait of what happens when power outweighs bloodline sanity. At number 9 is Marie Louise of Austria. Born into one of Europe's most entangled dynasties, her parents were double first cousins, sharing both sets of grandparents. In this family, cousin marriages weren't rare. They were tradition. Of 12 children, only 7 survived. Marie Louise's genetic map was so compressed, she had only 4 unique great-grandparents, half the normal number. That's the kind of genetic collapse scientists today only see in isolated populations. At 18, she was handed to Napoleon Bonaparte, her father's former enemy. It was a political move, not a romantic one. She wasn't just marrying a man, she was carrying the weight of empires. At number 8 is Lorraine Whitaker, a name that proves inbreeding isn't ancient history. It's still echoing today. Featured in a shocking modern documentary, the Whitaker family from a small American town became a living example of what happens when generations of isolation go unchecked. Lorraine herself is considered one of the most inbred individuals of recent times, and the mother of Timmy Whitaker, often described as one of the most genetically affected people alive today. Their story is a modern tragedy, not for spectacle, but as a stark reminder that this isn't just royal history, it's human history, repeating itself in forgotten corners of the world. At number 7 is Maria Thrine of Portugal, known as Maria the Pious, though history might better remember her as Maria the Troubled. Born in 1734, Maria's mind unraveled under the crushing weight of royal genetics. Her parents, King Joseph I of Portugal and Maria Anna of Spain, were one of dozens of Iberian royal couples bound by close kinship. And Maria herself? She married her own uncle. Half of her children died young, likely victims of inherited complications. As the years passed, her mental state deteriorated until she could no longer rule. Her downfall wasn't caused by war or rebellion, but by her own family's bloodline. Number 6 is Marie-Louise Elizabeth d'Orléans. Her life reads like a Gothic tragedy written in sorrow and royal blood. Born into dysfunction, her father was forced to marry his cousin, an illegitimate daughter of King Louis XIV. And Marie-Louise. She was passed along to yet another cousin, Prince Charles of Berry. 3 children, none survived. By age 14, she had turned to alcohol. Whether as escape or despair, no one knows. Her story stands as a haunting symbol of how dynastic duty can destroy lives before they even begin. At number 5 is Princess Alexia of Greece. Born in 1965, she represents the last whispers of a dying royal tradition. Her parents, Queen Anne-Marie of Denmark and King Constantine II of Greece, were not only royal but related twice over. Second cousins and third cousins, bound by blood and politics alike. Their family trees are a labyrinth of repetition, one grandmother also being her great-grandfather's sister. Though modern in time, the echoes of inbreeding still followed them, a shadow of an ancient pattern that refused to die. At number 4 is Maria Antonia of Austria, a Habsburg so genetically entangled she may have surpassed even Charles II, her infamous uncle. While Charles is the face of royal inbreeding, Maria Antonia's family line was even more extreme, a looping vine of repeated names and marriages. Some historians call it not a family tree, but a genetic circle. Her DNA resembled that of a child born to full siblings, an unimaginable level of inbreeding. Forgotten by history, yet from a genetic lens, she stands as the pinnacle of Habsburg collapse. At number 3 are mummies 317A and 317B, two tiny figures preserved in time, silent witnesses to Egypt's royal tragedy. They were the stillborn daughters of Pharaoh Tutankhamun and his queen Ankhesenamun, who also happened to be his half-sister. By then, centuries of sibling marriages had taken their toll. Even divine rulers couldn't escape the cruel arithmetic of genetics. The two infants, frail and malformed, marked the tragic end of a dynasty consumed by its own bloodline. At number 2 is Kimberly Colt, a name that sent shockwaves through modern Australia. Her family, known under a pseudonym, lived in near-total isolation, practicing multi-generational inbreeding for decades. When authorities uncovered the truth, it revealed one of the darkest genetic and social tragedies of the modern era. Kimberly was born into a world without outside connection, and paid the price with her health and humanity. Her story isn't royal, it's real. A chilling reminder that history's mistakes can still repeat themselves. And finally, at number 1, Cleopatra II Philopator. Forget the romanticized Queen of Hollywood. This Cleopatra was something far more haunting, the ultimate product of power and inbreeding. Born into the Ptolemaic dynasty, a Greek family ruling over Egypt, she was surrounded by a legacy of sibling and uncle-niece marriages. Her parents were siblings, her grandparents, siblings too, and her own siblings married each other before she took the throne herself. Cleopatra II wasn't just a ruler, she was a living symbol of dynastic obsession. Her bloodline was pure only by the cruelest definition of the word. Even her name, borrowed from a distant princess, hinted at how rare outside blood truly was. From glittering palaces to forgotten villages, from royal crowns to isolated communities, the pursuit of purity has left behind broken lives and haunting legacies. These women's stories remind us that history is not just written by power and politics, but by something far older, deeper, and far more unforgiving, blood itself. The Americans behind the counter paid little attention. To them, it was a routine meal, the same lunch they served every Tuesday. But to the prisoners, it was something that defied belief. This was not the cruelty they had been told to expect. It was worse because it was kindness. The contrast was unbearable. These men had been taught that the American soldier was a savage, that his country was starving, crumbling, morally bankrupt. Yet here in captivity, they ate better than they had as free soldiers of the empire. The humiliation was sharp, but so was the relief. When the trays were empty and the bottles drained, the hall fell silent. Some prisoners folded their hands as if in prayer. Others stared blankly ahead, lost in thought. The guards gave the order to rise, and the men filed out into the snow, still whispering about what they had tasted. As weeks turned into months, Camp McCoy became a strange reflection of life itself, disciplined, repetitive, yet strangely human. The prisoners rose each morning to the sound of the bugle, worked under the gray sky, and returned to barracks that no longer felt entirely foreign. Letters from home were read in trembling hands. Some brought relief, others only silence. At night, men whispered memories of Tokyo streets, of rice fields, of mothers' voices fading like old songs. Between guards and prisoners, a quiet understanding began to form, not of friendship, but of recognition. Once an American soldier offered a prisoner a stick of gum. The man, unsure what to do, swallowed it whole. The Americans burst out laughing, and even the prisoner smiled, embarrassed but alive. In that small, absurd moment, both sides remembered they were human. Men born into opposite wars, trapped inside the same winter. Even as routine settled over the camp, the prisoners' minds were never still. Some clung to the hope that Japan would turn the tide, that the empire would rise again, and every day without news felt like a test of loyalty. Others, worn down by hunger, fatigue, and the unrelenting care of their captors, whispered that defeat was inevitable. Arguments erupted in the barracks, voices sharp with frustration and disbelief. "You dishonor our homeland when you speak of surrender," one shouted. "And you dishonor reason by denying what is before your eyes," another fired back. The guards intervened quietly, but the tension lingered, a reminder that even in captivity, the war lived in their hearts. And yet, amid this turmoil, small acts of normalcy began to carve space for something else. Moments of laughter during English lessons, shared stories of home, wooden toys carved in free hours, the quiet thrill of chocolate or a sip of Coca-Cola. These fleeting sparks of life, small as they were, began to chip away at the rigid wall